So to anybody listening to this, do the friend test. What do your friends text you for advice about? Is it dating? Is it business? Is it mental health? Start posting about that.
How did you end up being this go-to person for all of this cool career stuff?
Yeah, I started my career in marketing, just working at different marketing agencies. And then I started going more into personal brands over company brands because I just noticed personal brands were getting more results than company brands. So really focused the majority of my career on building other people's personal brands. And it finally got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm tired of building everyone else's personal brand. I want to build my personal brand.
Yeah.
And I had done stuff on and off. Like I had been posting on LinkedIn pretty consistently most of my career. I dabbled in other platforms, but I finally was like, all right, I'm going to do this.
So how did you end up deciding like, okay, I'm done working for somebody else and I'm building my personal brand and now I want to just be working for me?
Yeah, I wish it was some like big, brave act of quitting, but in reality, I got laid off. So I didn't have another choice. So I was like, okay, well, guess I'm jumping into this. That was amazing. It pushed me into something bigger or better or different. I've never met someone that's like, I got laid off and everything else was ruined after that.
I'm so glad you are here. This is going to be so exciting to record this podcast. Courtney Johnson, welcome. It's so nice to see your face.
Thank you, Nikki. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I was thinking earlier about how I first found you. And I think that the TikTok algorithm started pushing you through to me. And I was like, I like what this girl's talking about. And then I started following you on LinkedIn and then things kind of started snowballing from there. And I realized I was learning so much from you that I ended up doing your Level Up on LinkedIn course back in September. And that's where we actually got to finally meet. I know we haven't met in real life yet, but we actually got to meet and I learned so much in that course. So it was just very natural that I wanted to invite you to come on and talk about your journey in the world of entrepreneurship.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. And kudos to you because you're a great student. You're super proactive and you implement everything and you're super curious. And yeah, you were literally a dream client.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you saying that because I think that, it's so easy to be, I guess like, I don't know if overwhelmed is the right word, but it's like, I feel like every time we open up social apps, there's like so many people, talking about how they figured things out and that they want to like share things with you. And it can be overwhelming because you're like, okay, what would be the best course of action for me to take? And I'm very introspective. I have a very high level of self-awareness. So I really try to sit on things and feel like, okay, is this speaking to me or am I just getting like excited because I think, oh, like maybe this could really be like the push that I need. And I remember when I saw you had posted like, hey, this is the last chance for like the early bird pricing. I saw it right as I was going to bed and I was like, you know what? You got to do this. And so I just booked it and I was like, oh my God. And immediately I was so excited and I was like, this was the best decision. I already know.
It's so funny that a lot of times too, whenever people, I don't know if it's just like energetically committing to something by putting money down, but a lot of times the time between when somebody signs up and whenever they start the course, they're like, I've already done these 50 things because I committed, I made the commitment and this is like, I'm going for it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So, okay. One of the things that I think is so great about you is that you share so many incredible tips about being in the workforce, about career cheat codes. You're the first to be like, I figured this out, so I'm going to tell everybody about it. How did you end up here? How did you end up being this go-to person for all of this cool career stuff?
Yeah, I started my career in marketing, just working at different marketing agencies. And then I started going more into personal brands over company brands because I just noticed personal brands were getting more results than company brands. So really focused the majority of my career on building other people's personal brands. And it finally got to a point where I was like, okay, fuck it. I'm tired of building everyone else's personal brand. I want to build my personal brand.
Yeah.
And I had done stuff on and off. Like I had been posting on LinkedIn pretty consistently most of my career. I dabbled in other platforms, but I finally was like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start posting every single day on my account. So I started with TikTok. I started posting about actually like Airbnb stuff because I thought that's what I was going to create content about. Turns out that wasn't my zone of genius.
Uh-huh.
And in the process of just being like, I'm just going to post about everything I'm interested in and see what unfolds, I noticed that my audience really liked my career cheat codes. And so I
Uh-huh.
fully leaned into that, just like got the feedback from the audience, realized it was something they resonated with, and doubled down on that. But I honestly, I feel like finding your niche or figuring out like where you're going to go really is just sharing what you're obsessed with and sharing what people ask you for advice on. So
Mhm.
like a big reason why I started posting about career is because my friends would ask me career questions. So to anybody listening to this, do the friend test. What do your friends text you for advice about? Is
Yeah.
it dating? Is it business? Is it mental health? Start posting about that. That's probably
Yeah.
the real juice.
That is such a good point to make. And I never really thought about that. And now I'm sitting here thinking, like, what do my friends and I talk about? Like, what do people ask me for advice on? Because I think it's so daunting, right? I mean, I know like my current For You page has just been inundated with all these people saying, like, why aren't you posting? Like, you should be posting, you should be this. And it's so easy to get that deer in the headlights and feel like, oh my God, like, what am I, like, am I even interesting? And then it's like, no, but we all are so interesting. But it's just like putting yourself out there. That's the biggest hurdle.
Yeah, you're super numb to what's interesting about you. And it
Hmm.
probably is something that you think is completely obvious. It could be
Yeah.
something as simple as like the town you live in. Somebody else's dream is to move there one day. Or
Hmm.
maybe it's something that you've already accomplished that you think is obvious or easy. Other people are trying to get there. So if you just start sharing your life, there will be somebody trying to accomplish something that you've already accomplished.
It's funny. So back when I was in Europe for a few months over this or end of summer, early fall, when I left, I booked a one-way ticket. I didn't know when I was going to come back. I was just kind of like, whatever, I don't care. I'll figure it out. Well, then when I booked my ticket home, my brother called me a few days later and he said, oh, I was with mom and dad last night. And dad said, oh, did you hear the storms coming back into town? And my brother was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, your sister booked her flight home. And I was like, is that how they see me? Like every time I go and visit, are they like, oh, this storm just is rolling through our house? And so I'm like, maybe. And so then I kind of just laughed to myself because I was like, well, whatever, I mean, I kind of just do roll in and out of town. But
yeah, it's funny. It's hard for us to see just see what's special about us. I had a friend that we did this exercise with like a group of girls where every girl we would give them like three
mhm.
words of whenever they walk into a room, what are the three words that eh, describe their energy.
Okay.
And ask enough friends that you're going to
Hmm.
be like, whoa, that's crazy. Like these are things that I didn't even think of. So maybe your family sees your energy as like bold and vivacious, and your
Yeah.
friends will probably say, yeah, same thing. And you might be like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. I know. It's so neat to try to understand other people's perspectives of you. But I think in a lot of times you do have to ask because you just, like you said, you're just kind of numb to like what it is that you're putting out there.
Exactly.
So when you decided, so you said you were working in marketing. So how did you end up deciding like, okay, I'm done working for somebody else and I'm building my personal brand and now I want to just be working for me?
Yeah, I wish it was some like big brave act of quitting, but in reality I got laid off. So
Oh,
I didn't have
cool.
another choice. So
Uh-huh.
I was like, okay, well, guess
Yeah.
I'm jumping into this.
Uh-huh. But that's awesome because I mean, I think I actually heard you talking about this on your podcast where you said that so many people that you've talked to that you've either had as clients or you let friends of yours who have gotten laid off have said like that was the best thing that ever could have happened to me.
Yeah, I don't have any exception to that rule. Every
Mm-hmm.
single person, you ask them a year later and they're like, oh yeah, that was amazing. It pushed me into something bigger or better or different. I've never met someone that's like, I got laid off and everything else was ruined after that. Never. It's
Yeah.
a good thing.
Yeah, because I mean, I think sometimes it's so easy to get comfortable in a job. And maybe you have, I mean, I know for me, when I was at Intel, like I was so comfortable there and there was a lot of great perks and I had got to do a lot of cool things in the different roles that I was in. And it was probably a good 18 months between when I was like, I really need to leave this job when I actually finally did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was truly because of comfort, And then finally
Yeah.
one day it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I'm like, I'm out of here. It's time to find something new.
That's a big scary leap. Like for anyone that's done that, like really made the jump without like having another job lined up or having something lined up. That's so brave and amazing. And like, what a test of faith. That's amazing.
Oh no, I did end up looking for another job. Like, so,
Oh.
but yeah. Oh no, I found another job before I left that. Although that job that I loved and I learned so much and I am so grateful for, when I left that job last October, I had no idea what I was going to do. So, yeah. So here we are now though. And like, if you would have asked me a year ago, if this is what I would be doing right now, I would have been like I would have been blown away, because that was not what I was thinking about this time last year at all.
Yeah, same. Some of this didn't even exist a few years ago, what I'm doing. So I wouldn't have even known.
So you are like one of the go-to LinkedIn people. You talk a lot about LinkedIn in lots of your videos. You talk about it. I mean, that's, I think, one of the first times I saw you on TikTok, but you were talking about LinkedIn. So it's kind of interesting. So how did you really feel like you doubled down on LinkedIn and starting to like push people to figure that out and brand themselves over there?
Mm-hmm. The reason why I started posting more about LinkedIn is because it was something I thought was obvious and that clearly other people didn't know about. So I'm like, all right, this is a great opportunity for me to share a piece of knowledge with other people. But the reason why LinkedIn is so important is because people are looking for you. Like, it's where people go to find a graphic designer or an executive coach or a project manager. Like, people are looking for you. It's so easy to just make it easy for them to find you. So also, there's 1 billion users on LinkedIn and less than 1% post once a week. So if you can just start posting one time per week, you're going to be in the top 1% of the whole platform. And that's 1 billion people competing for your job or your clients or whatever. It's such a slam dunk, especially if you're creating content on other platforms. Just repurpose one thing a week onto LinkedIn. You'll be surprised the opportunities that will come.
Yeah, that is such a wild statistic that there are so few people who are actually posting regularly. I mean, it blows my mind. And then,
crazy.
Yeah. So when did you get into like creating courses? Because I know that that's something that I've been through it. I've been through your LinkedIn course. I know you have other ones as well. And I can tell how much work and time and energy you put into not only like the live sessions that we had, but also the content and the coursework and the homework. So how did you decide like I could actually teach this and have it be like something I do repeatedly?
Yeah, that course has probably been around. The first version of the course started in maybe 2017 or 2016.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Dang.
I used to create courses for my clients and for internal marketing that I would give to like the companies that I was at. And then maybe 2019, I started just doing one-off sessions for companies. So they would hire me to come do a LinkedIn training for them. That would either be like 2 hours or half a day. Then I built it into a one-on-one offering. And every single time I would just iterate, make it a little better. And then 1 year ago, I think I put it onto Maven and formalized it into a cohort structure. So yeah, it's been in iteration mode for like 8 years, which is crazy. But I think it's just a testament to like, you don't have to be fully done. Like put it out in version 1 and then iterate. Then you can add on more, maybe increase the price a little, maybe tailor this a little bit to this whatever person. But it's been a long time coming.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so cool. I did not know that it was for so long. Yeah. I mean, because I got a ton of value out of it. I absolutely loved the structure. I loved that there was homework, because it's like on the weekend, I'd be like, oh man, I got to get this homework done. I got to make sure I've done all of this. So I think that it's really neat but it also wasn't too much. Like it wasn't overwhelming to the point where I was like, oh my God, I have so much to do. So anyways, again, I just felt, I know I left a great review because I found it so valuable.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I remember you mentioned at one point that LinkedIn had actually like reached out to you and you do work with them now. And that is actually so cool, because I feel like you're now able to coach from a perspective of like having kind of like seen how the sausage is made, or isn't there some weird saying like that?
Yeah, it's funny because hopefully LinkedIn doesn't hear this, but LinkedIn's goal is not to make you more money. It's to make them more money.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of things that LinkedIn will put out For example, like everybody should upgrade to premium all the time. Like that's obviously to make them more money, not to make you more money. Like obviously there's benefits of premium, but you don't need it all the time for your whole career forever.
Right.
Just little things in the algorithm. So basically, if you go to LinkedIn and you go to their help desk and their resources, they're not all going to be set up for your success. Just because it's a company, they need to make money, they need to hit their bottom lines. So being able to see both sides of it, seeing like LinkedIn's revenue model and seeing how people approach and get jobs on LinkedIn from like my side and my client successes, I can balance and tailor it in a way that's cutting through that and sharing what actually matters. And then also giving a foundation. So I think it's really important to not just like tell people what to do, but give people a foundation of how to think about their personal brand, how to think about content that can extend beyond LinkedIn and beyond just these pieces of content and beyond your job search as like a foundational skill that you're going to have the rest of your career.
I like that. So what do you think about, because I know, algorithms are so insane. I mean, sometimes I'm like blown away. You know how they say like, oh, the phones are listening to you, and then they're like, but they're not. But then it's like, sometimes I think about something and then all of a sudden I see a TikTok or an ad and I'm like, I didn't even type that. I just thought it. Like, are you in my brain now? Like, what is going on? So obviously like the people that I see on my LinkedIn feed are a result of the algorithm paying attention to who I'm interacting with, who I'm connecting with, all of that. So I feel like I got to a point where I was just like inundated with personal brand experts, and like everybody is a personal brand expert just because they created their personal brand 6 months ago and now they're like, well, let me tell you how to do it too. So what do you think about that, and now that personal branding has become such a big focal point?
I think it's great. I think we actually need more people that are helping others build their personal brand, because think of how many consultants or experts we have around building company brands. We have so many. There's so many people that are company brand, company social media, company whatever experts, and there's still very little personal brand experts or personal brand educators. And I believe that personal brand gets you results so much faster because it's like connecting on a human to human level. So yeah, I actually want to see more of it. I think we need more resources because there's really not a lot.
That's neat. And, it reminds me of something that my dad has said to me my entire life, and this is a 78-year-old lifelong entrepreneur. So I think that he understood the value of personal branding before personal branding was even like a phrase that we were using all the time. But he's always told me that people like to do business with people they like. And that like literally boils down to like, okay, what is this person's personal brand? Like, why do I like this person? Why do I want to do business with them? Why am I going to trust them? And it's because they like them. And it's because they like them because they know them, because they've been able to put themselves out there and brand themselves as a certain way.
Yeah, that's super important. I really like that quote because it also shows that like everybody has a personal brand. You don't really get to choose if you have one or not. You do already have one. It's people's perception of you. And personal brand can be online, it can be offline, it can be your reputation. There's so many aspects to it, but it really boils down to how people perceive you. So in the case of your father, people were perceiving him as a great person to work with.
Yeah.
A person that they really like.
Yeah. Hey, there's a lot of, we call them Jim Corbett-isms. There's a lot of those like phrases that float around his ecosystem because they're things that he's like his mantras.
We need a Jim Corbett episode on the pod.
Oh my gosh. Trust me. I was thinking about that this morning. It's definitely on the roadmap.
Good. I can't wait to listen to it.
Yeah, you would. Oh my God, you would love him. He is just a total piece of work. Oh gosh. So one of the things too that I remember noticing about you very early on in your like entrepreneurial career is that you got involved in a lot of different things, and you've been really able to reiterate to your audience like the importance and the value of having like multiple streams of income. So how did you kind of, what was the building blocks of getting yourself to where you are now when you got laid off and started focusing on personal branding?
I've had so many random odd jobs and side hustles throughout the years, but the very first thing I did that was consistent was ghostwriting for other people. So even though I got laid off from my full-time job, I had a couple of ghostwriting clients, so it wasn't too big of a hit because I'm like, all right, I already have this other thing. Oh my gosh, I have and then the second thing was digital products.
Uh-huh.
I've had digital products for maybe 6 years now.
Okay.
It started off with just an ebook that I made about post ideas that I initially listed for like $5. I think it's like $12 now.
Uh-huh.
And that was starting to generate some income. By the way, I think digital products are like the easiest
Mm-hmm.
first way to start generating income on the side. And I think some people are kind of like bullshitting about it. Like you're not going to make like bazillions of dollars, but you might make like $100 a month
Mm-hmm.
pretty easy and pretty passively, or maybe a
Yeah.
few $100s, and that's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was free ghostwriting, digital products, like training teams on LinkedIn. Yeah, those were all my first initial side hustles.
Were people finding you to train them on LinkedIn through LinkedIn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially back in, I think this was like 2018, 2019. There was like, I think the posting feature had just came out and there like nobody was even posting.
Uh-huh.
So I was posting and I'm like, why is nobody else posting? Hello, this is going to be important.
Yeah.
So they would find me and reach out and be like, okay, it looks like you know something. Can you teach our sales team about it?
Oh, that's so cool. I mean, I have to say, in just I had been posting weekly on LinkedIn prior to taking your course. And but it was simply because I was just marketing my podcast and putting out like, hey, there's a new podcast. Here's a clip, hopefully go watch it. Since I took your course and have been making LinkedIn like a priority, like I literally have a time block every morning that's like LinkedIn engagement, so it's like I sitting up there and I'm interacting with people, and then I do that again at night. But like since that has happened, the amount of cool people that have come into my life, it is so awesome. Like I can't even explain it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how people come into your life too. The cool thing about LinkedIn is like you guys already have, even if you have no personal brand, even if you've never posted, you don't have a podcast, whatever, you already have people on LinkedIn. Like even if you have 300 connections on LinkedIn that you have from old jobs, that is still 300 people that are highly valuable connections. And the minute you post, hey, I'm starting to do graphic design freelancing, like that's 300 people that are somebody's going to come out of the woodworks. And it's going to be someone that was like your boss's boss 3 jobs ago, their friend.
Right.
They're going to be like, hey, oh my gosh, you do graphic design. I need a graphic designer right now. Like it is so crazy how the web of people works on LinkedIn. But also remember like your connections too. They might not need your service, but maybe they know somebody that does. Maybe
Totally.
they're like, oh, I don't need a graphic designer right now, but actually this girl that's also in my mastermind is looking for a graphic designer. Can I refer you?
And referrals are the best because it's like, I mean, yes, you can certainly Google reviews and all those types of things, but like having somebody that you already know or that you trust, or you're like, okay, I feel like a good energy with this person, giving you a referral, I feel like that's so much more valuable than just reading a bunch of reviews from a Google search.
Yeah, referrals are so incredibly valuable. But yeah, personal brand is really for everyone.
Yeah, it definitely is. So you mentioned Airbnb a little bit ago, and that's something that I think is very fun. I actually, to be honest with you, I've not been a big Airbnb person until recently. I've always been like, I want to stay in a hotel. I want room service. I want a robe. I like the comfort of knowing that there's other people just in case something bad were to happen. However, when I was in Europe and I was like, okay, I'm going to be here for 2 months, I'm certainly not going to stay in a hotel for 2 months straight. So I did stay in a couple of Airbnbs and I really enjoyed it. So how did you get into that world, and what have you enjoyed and not enjoyed about it?
Yeah, it's so funny. Whenever I got into Airbnb because I started dating my boyfriend and he had bought a house, like first house, exciting. And I was like, hey, maybe instead of moving into that house, you can move into my tiny studio apartment. You can Airbnb that house and I'll Airbnb it for you. I've always wanted to do it. So I was so excited at this opportunity. And he was probably like, that's crazy, but let's give it a go.
That's great.
And we did. And it turned out to be pretty successful and really, really fun. And we ended up buying a house together. And now we have our Airbnb and we have a house that we live in. But yeah, it's super, super cool. I'm just really passionate about like showing people around Texas, specifically Austin.
Yeah.
I think it's just like a really magical, cool place. And a lot of people have like misconceptions about it. So it's a fun thing that people are coming and I can like give them a really great experience.
Yeah.
but yeah, that's kind of how I got into it is I'm like, we're going to use your house for Airbnb. Sorry, you're not moving in.
Yeah.
And it worked well.
And you were comfortable enough to want to share a studio apartment with somebody because that is probably a bigger ask than let's Airbnb your house.
Yeah, that was tight, but we did it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, cool. So it's so, what am I trying to think about here? So when you set out to, when you put together your strategy for like the coming year, like how do you go about like doing goal setting, and how do you take a look at every aspect of what it is that you're doing and kind of set yourself up for the way you want to continue to grow your business?
So I just did the One Thing retreat. It's like an in-person and a virtual retreat that helps you plan for the upcoming year. Highly recommend it, by the way. I'm definitely going to do it next year. I think the in-person is like $1,500 and the virtual is like $300 or $400, but it was really cool. It's just like a reflection on the past year and planning for the future. But the One Thing, it's also a book. It's just a really awesome concept that asks you, what is the one thing you can be doing every single day that makes everything else easier or unnecessary? So for me, that's posting every day. Because if I post every day, I don't need to do like outreach to find clients. I don't need to go find things. They come to me if I post every day. So I think of my 2025 planning as my one thing. Like, yes, I have like big goals and dreams and this and that, but like, what is my one thing? My one thing is posting every day. So that is what the strategy boils down to. I need to be posting every day, and the results will come from that.
That's great. So I heard you say on your podcast, I think might have just been your most recent one, and you were talking about how, someone had asked a question about like posting strategy, and you kind of basically said that like some of the best content creators that like don't really have a strategy. They just kind of like come up with something and then they like record it and put it out there. So do you feel like, I know you also talk a lot about repurposing your content though. So do you feel like you have a balance of, hey, I just had this great idea, I'm going to create a TikTok, and then going through like, okay, what's been working? What should I like push out here? What haven't I talked to people about in a while? Things like that.
Sorry, my dogs are barking.
That's okay.
Yeah, I have a balance of posting in the moment and repurposing. So I try to have at least 1 to 2 repurposed videos and posts scheduled out every single week. So I don't really have to think about it. I get like a few days off, and then the rest is kind of in the moment. I think that the most important thing you can be doing is like just posting every day, even if it's bad. It's like learning a new instrument. It's like you have to play the guitar every day, even if it's bad. And you're going to be around people that are playing the guitar really well, and it's going to be embarrassing because you're going to suck and everybody else is going to be good. That's fine. That's what you have to do. Like building the habit of posting is more important than adjusting your post and making your post great, because that's going to happen naturally over time. The most important thing you can do is just build the habit of posting. So give yourself permission to post badly. Just do it, and it's going to improve.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I've seen some of like the influencers and people that I follow on TikTok, especially, and like they'll maybe hit that 1 million follower mark, and they'll put together like a little montage of when they started to where they are now. And the ones who include the audio as well with the video, sometimes it's just all, like a string of like, video, but with a music over it or a song over it. But when they include the audio with it, I'm like, whoa, you have improved so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And the biggest mistake I see is people are like, oh my gosh, Courtney, I have this like 5-page strategy and this like whole matrix of content creation, and I know exactly what days and exactly what time and in exactly what format. I've never seen that and seen the person actually execute on it. When people come to me and they're like, I have this whole strategy, I just haven't done it yet. I'm like, it's not about the strategy. You can implement the strategy later. It's like the same as like, you can't go into playing the guitar being like, I learned this like crazy, I don't know anything about music, but like, I learned this crazy song and I can like shred whatever. Like, no. Like you can't start there. You have to start badly and then improve, and then you'll get there. So like, start badly, just start.
Yeah, it's so true. And it is so daunting. I mean, you know that. I mean, so that's what I want to touch on next is your whole, like, you're so transparent and you're so real about like the cringe factor or what things are making you uncomfortable. And like you posted something the other day and you were like, oh, like this is my current like area where I'm feeling cringe. And I was like, oh my God, I love that because sometimes, you know, you see people and you're like, oh my God, they're so good at this. They've got this figured out. They're teaching other people how to do it. But then I love that you'll always like be real and say like, oh, well, this is where I'm currently feeling like massive cringe.
Yeah. And I do remember that post. I'm feeling cringe about brand deals. My puppies are here to say hi.
Oh, I love that. Dogs are the best.
Yeah, it's I feel cringe all the time. Like it's not something you really fully get over. I don't know. Have you fully gotten over cringe? I feel like it's always there.
I think it's always there. It just depends on, kind of like you said, it depends on like which avenue you're going down. Like I feel like I'm very comfortable now in some areas. Just I'm like, okay, I'm posting it, whatever. Like great. Like, you know, I'll be quick to respond to any sort of comments, and I'm like, good. But then there's other areas where like I feel like I'm on the edge of the cliff because I'm like, I know that if I just start doing this, it's going to benefit me. But there's just something where I'm like, oh, but I know that I'm like right there. So it's going to start happening.
Have you read the book, The Big Leap?
No, I haven't.
It basically just illustrates exactly what you said. Like when you're kind of on the precipice of something and there's like one little thread holding you back and you figure out how to like snip that thread to like fully jump off the cliff.
Yes.
It's a good book for that.
Okay. I need to read that. I go in spurts with reading and I drive myself crazy because it's not like I am not a good reader. It's not like I don't want to learn. Like I'm constantly pushing myself to learn new things. But for sometimes, I don't know, like sometimes for me, like a book, I'm like, oh, it's so long or there's so many pages or I don't want to like not focus. So I'm like, oh, I'll do it later when I'm more calmed down or this. And then I'm like, okay, you literally haven't picked that book up in 10 days.
I have a cheat code for that. And I believe that like 90% of books, you can get all the information in like 5 minutes. So I would just go on YouTube and type in like, for example, The Big Leap 5-minute summary.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
You don't need to read the whole book.
Isn't it so crazy how you can literally find anything on YouTube these days, I feel like?
I know. I call it YouTube University because
seriously,
I learned way more on YouTube than in school.
Oh my gosh. I know. I saw some like, you know, tweet or whatever on Instagram the other day. And it was like, wow, I sure am glad that I learned about parallelograms instead of taxes because it really comes in handy during parallelogram season. And it's so true.
I know.
It's so true.
Why do we not learn this shit?
Yeah. So, okay. So when you post a lot of these cheat codes, right? Like you often, you know, what do you call them? Like problematic cheat codes because you do ruffle feathers, which I think is awesome because, you know, I've seen some of the comments on some of your posts and I just laugh because like, I love when people get so agitated over like something on the internet. I'm like, I hope that your blood pressure didn't spike too high while writing this comment.
You know?
But I love that you phrase it the way you do. But I also, what I think is so cool about this day and age that we're in is that there's so much to be learned from so many different people. And in some cases, you know, you could look at somebody posting about career stuff and think like, okay, that's kind of common sense. But I feel like a lot of the things that you post, I'm like, whoa, I didn't think about it like that. So like, where do you feel like this knowledge about these career cheat codes like came from? And like, how did you, I don't know, like, where does it all come from?
Yeah. I grew up, my mom was like a preschool teacher and my dad worked for a grocery store. And so I didn't have like these parents that were like in corporate or they were entrepreneurs. I didn't know a lot of this stuff, a lot of the like unspoken rules. So whenever I got into the workforce, it was like eye-opening. Like I felt like everybody else knew this like secret code or these secret handshakes that I didn't know. So I just started clocking it. Like I started becoming really conscious of it and like, oh, that person talks this way, but I talk this way. Maybe I should change that.
Okay.
Just in my own development, I became really conscious of like what other people were doing and I started to document them. And that's how I started sharing it out, just because it's something that I think a lot of people already inherently know, but I learned it in my 20s.
Huh. Okay. I mean, I still feel like some of the things that you're sharing are so like, holy shit, I didn't think about it like that. And so I think that's really cool.
Sneaky and manipulative.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it just comes from my own experiences. Like I just try to share everything from my own experience, and maybe I just have a different way of seeing the world, I guess.
No, I think it's great. It's so cool. I mean, honestly, anybody who is listening or watching this who is working for somebody else, who is feeling like, I'm not sure what my next step is, like, please, like, start following Courtney. She will teach you so much about figuring out the next step. And also, please, just a shameless plug to please like and review and rate my podcast, because those ratings mean so much in the algorithms for podcast apps to be pushing your content out. So I was instructed earlier that I need to be asking more often for people to review my podcast. So I'm going to start plugging it more as I'm in the podcast.
Thank you for doing that, because I haven't done that yet, and I probably should.
Yeah, your podcast is great. So your podcast is about like not gatekeeping anything, sharing all the things. So how did you come up with that idea to get rolling on that?
Yeah, I mean, the main reason why I started my podcast is because I wanted more deeper conversations with people. And I figured it could be, there's just so many people in my life that are like, hey, I want to hang out, or I want to get together, I want to do this or that. Or people that I really admire, and it's really hard to like squeeze in time. So I'm like, okay, how can I maximize time? I can have a great conversation while I'm working and creating content, and I'm promoting and helping your stuff. So a podcast just seemed like the natural way to do that.
Okay. Well, that's fun. And that is great. And why not? I mean, I feel like even when I have a guest on who I know really well in my personal life, I always learn so much more, not only about them, but about their business and just random things that like they utilize in their business world. And I'm just like, wait, this was so fun. Like, even though we're on a screen.
Yeah, exactly. You can, go deeper with people, which I really like, and build relationships. And I just think that's really important. And a lot of people were asking me for it. They're like, we want you to go deeper on some of these topics. I already had my Patreon, which is like my private podcast. So I was like, all right, let's take this public.
Yeah, that's so great. So Patreon, that's another like cool avenue for income. So what made you jump into that side of business and say like, hey, I've got something good enough where I know people will subscribe?
Yeah, well, it actually took me like 3 months to get my first subscriber. So if it takes you a while on Patreon, that's okay. It did for me too. I read this article called 1,000 True Fans by Kevin Kelly. Okay. And he says if you can get 1,000 people to pay you $10 a month, that is, $120,000 a year, and that supports all of your needs. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, interesting. I think that's a really interesting way to approach community building. So I'm like, all right, I'll start a Patreon. That's mainly why I started it. And because there's a lot of things I wanted to talk about that I can't really talk about publicly. Like I work with a lot of brands. Some things like the algorithm filter. So I also wanted an avenue where I could go deeper on stuff and talk about stuff without being filtered by the social platforms.
Yeah, I mean, totally makes sense. Yeah. Like, it's so true. I mean, there are some things that I pay for one of the Patreon memberships I pay for. They have a daily podcast. So, I mean, they're already putting out a ton of content, right? But they have a Patreon where they do like 5 different episodes a month, where maybe it's like they'll be all together with their family, and there's the girls who do it, they're sisters, and then they have 2 other sisters as well. So there's been this like, intrigue around all of them. All of them are influencers.
Is it the Strawberry Milk Mob girls?
Oh, no, it isn't. But it's funny. Like I know who you're talking about. No, the podcast is called The Toast. It's Girl with No Job and her sister. Yeah. So I've been following them for literally years and years and years.
Love
like
that.
They were like people that I started following on Snapchat in like 2016. And I was just so intrigued by this group of 4 sisters in New York, like, each so different, but like cool family dynamic between the 4 of them. So yeah, I mean, their Patreons are fun because it'll be like just more raw and like things that you aren't necessarily going to talk about like every single day, or going deeper on a subject that like not your entire audience is going to give that much of a shit about, but some people are, and they're willing to pay for it.
Exactly. It's also a really good testing ground too. Like if I have any courses where I'm like, oh, I would love to make a course about that, but I don't actually want to put in like the hours and hours and hours to make a course. I'm like, well, I'll do like a mini course on Patreon, see if people even like it. Because if nobody cares, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe I put my energy to something else.
Yeah.
But if I put out a mini course or an episode on Patreon and everyone is like, we want more of this, that shows maybe I do want to invest and expand on that. And maybe I do want to like bring that public or sell that in some way. So it's also a really great testing ground.
No, that's brilliant because like you said earlier, when you were very first starting out posting on TikTok, you were talking about Airbnb stuff and then you started talking about career stuff and that's where it started taking off. So you're like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, never mind Airbnb.
Yeah, it's all like a co-creation with the audience for sure.
Yeah, that is one of the things that I'm like really working on with this rebrand and with focusing, you know, having my title be like Entrepreneurship Anywhere. Because I and like anywhere, I'm going to keep repeating this because I want, you know, if I have new listeners, I want them to understand like the triple entendre of Entrepreneurship Anywhere, the anywhere piece. It's because I have guests from all over the world in all types of industries. I'm a digital nomad right now, so I'm recording from all sorts of places. And then also because I feel like we're at a point in time where there truly are entrepreneurship opportunities anywhere. And that's why my goal with this podcast is to continue to bring on people who are doing cool things across all types of businesses, because there are so many opportunities. And if you have like the right pieces of the puzzle and you're doing certain things, you can build a business out of anything you want.
Yeah, that's really inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, then thank you for being here and talking about all the cool things that you're into. So since, you know, we are in a brand new year and there is, you know, the year is our oyster, right? Month 1, chapter 1 of 12 of 2025. What is something that you hope from a business perspective that we have left behind in 2024?
Oh, good
and if you
question.
Thank you, because I have one if you need to think about it, and I'm definitely going to share mine.
Yeah, what is yours?
Okay, my pet peeve, like it grinds my gears so bad, is ghosting in the business place. And I don't mean ghosting from the perspective of I applied for a job and they never got back to me. I mean ghosting when you've actually met one-on-one or two-on-one with somebody live or in person, and that you have said, hey, like, and they've said, hey, we'd like X, Y, and Z from you. You're like, no problem. You put together a proposal, you follow up, and you get literally nothing. I think it is so unbelievably rude. Like, cause it takes 2 seconds to fire off a text or an email and just be like, hey, you know what? We've decided we don't have the resources for this right now. Like, thanks for the time, whatever. 2 seconds it takes. But then by ghosting, I feel like all you're doing is showing the person that like they probably didn't want to work with you anyway. So I hope that we can leave that in 2024 and that people will have just a little bit more respect for people that have put some time and effort into submitting a proposal when you ask them to do that.
Dude, I cannot agree more. That happens to me a lot. I worked with somebody this year. There's a graphic designer who like ghosted me mid-project after I paid her. Yeah, like with still deliverables left. And like we're friends on Instagram and she like posts all the time. And I'm like, girl, and I followed up with her on like everything. And I'm like, you can't do that.
Oh
but whatever.
My God.
Anyways,
that is
fine.
crazy.
It happened. But I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe not do that. But then I also recognize that if that happens to someone, maybe they're going through like a really hard life thing. Whatever. Doesn't matter.
I mean, maybe. Yeah. I mean, I literally had somebody, I shit you not. It made me laugh because I was like, this didn't really just happen. We had met in person. I had followed up not once, not twice, but 3 times. Didn't hear anything back. And then 2 months after, I got an emoji, like little sticker response with the sad face with the tear. And that was it. I was like, what is happening?
That's crazy.
I know.
I've never seen anything like that before.
Neither had I. I was like, I literally looked at my phone and I was fully expecting then like a text to pop through. Nothing.
Okay, well, I know what I want to leave in 2024.
Yes.
And that is the idea of saturation. Everyone's like, oh, this is too saturated. The excuse of saturation. Yes. The excuse. I want to leave that excuse behind. Yeah, a lot of people are like, oh, I can't be a fitness coach, even though that's my dream because it's saturated. Oh, I can't go be an entrepreneur and open a coffee shop because there's too many coffee shops. Like, no. It can always be done better. And it can always be done from your perspective.
Yes.
That's where the key is. So yeah, maybe there is a lot of coffee shops in your town, but you're specifically into, I don't know, matcha, and it's going to be matcha focused. Or maybe like, yeah, you're going to be a personal trainer and there's lots of personal trainers, but you specifically are working with postpartum women who work from home. Like, whatever your passion is, it will be niche enough to where you like fully go all in on what you're obsessed with. It will be niche enough to where you are a category of one every time. Period. And there'll be no saturation.
Yes, I love that. It's funny because I actually had a conversation with my dad a few weeks ago about like my podcast in general. And, he was asking, what's it kind of like as far as like people that are doing podcasts on entrepreneurship? I'm like, dude, there's a ton of them, there's a ton of them, but everybody's focus is different. And so when I was working through this rebrand, like I was very, very like thought out and very detailed and said, here's my target, like here's who I'm serving, here's how I'm serving them, here's what they're walking away with, here are all of my whys. Like, I really went through and tried to make sure that I thought about everything and what people are going to be leaving listening to my podcast with. And I mean, for me, it's more than one thing, right? I want somebody, if they're an aspiring entrepreneur, I want them to be inspired. If they're an entrepreneur that's like in the throes of it, I want them to be like, oh man, okay, they had the same problem I did, or if somebody's just a business person and likes learning about business, I want them to be like, wow, I can learn about all different types of business by listening to this podcast. So, I mean, it is interesting, but like you said, there's only one me, there's only one you. So by like really digging in and getting to know yourself and then figuring out like, okay, how can I best present myself? You become a party of one, a niche of one.
Absolutely. And like people resonate, like different people are going to resonate with you. Like you could have taken any other LinkedIn course, but they're probably a little bit more corporate and like boring, and you just like don't fuck with that. So you're like, no, I want to, like you probably related to the way I communicate a message. Yes. Same way, like anyone listening to this, like different people are going to relate to you for different reasons. Maybe you come from a similar background. Maybe you like speak a certain way. Maybe you have a certain lifestyle, like you're a digital nomad. Like that is a lifestyle that you're relating to somebody on that level. Yeah. And people need, it might be a message that people have heard, but they need to hear it from you.
Yeah. Well, thanks. And I love that because I mean, it is so true. It's so fun to, have taken the leap because it really has like changed my life a lot over the last few months. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing all about your life and your journey, and tell everybody where they can find you and how they can connect.
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram at Courtney Johnson or on TikTok at Courtney Johnson. If you just Google Courtney Johnson, social media, it'll come up. So yeah, and my next cohort starts in the middle of January. So probably right after this episode comes out.
Yeah. And you guys, I am living proof. If you are curious about personal branding, about leveling up on LinkedIn, utilizing LinkedIn to the best of its ability, this course was absolutely worth it. Whether you are an entrepreneur or especially if you are working in the corporate world, there's so much goodness to get out of it. And you will meet so many cool people in the cohort, like the coolest girls and guys I have met with, and like we still chat regularly. So love that. Yeah. All right. Well, another plug to please like, follow, share, rate, review, all the things. Let me know what you think, and we will talk to you next week. Thank you so much, Courtney, for being here.
Thank you.